I was standing in the rain outside the towering glass building that housed Sterling Technologies, my termination letter dissolving into pulp in my trembling hands, when the most powerful man in San Francisco knelt down beside me and whispered that everything would be okay. In that moment, Alexander Sterling wasn't the billionaire CEO whose face graced the cover of Forbes magazine. He was just a man who saw someone breaking and decided to stay. The morning had started like any other nightmare. I'd woken up in my cramped studio apartment in the Tenderloin district, the one with the broken heater and the neighbor who screamed at 3 a.m, and prepared myself for another day of invisible humiliation. For 6 months, I'd been working as a junior analyst at Sterling Technologies, one of thousands of faceless employees in a company that revolutionized artificial intelligence. I was nothing special, just Maya Rodriguez from Fresno, the first in my family to graduate college, drowning in student debt and desperately trying to prove I belonged in a world that seemed designed to remind me I didn't. If you believe in unexpected kindness, in second chances that change everything, and in love that crosses every boundary, please hit that like button, comment below, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel. You never know whose life you might touch today. That morning, I'd been called into my supervisor's office. Richard Chen had never liked me, had made that clear from day one with his dismissive comments about my state school education and my accent that I couldn't quite hide. He smiled when he handed me the termination letter, citing performance issues that we both knew were fabricated. I'd been laid off effective immediately, my security badge deactivated, my dreams of making my immigrant parents proud shattered in a 10-minute meeting where I wasn't even allowed to defend myself. I'd walked out of that building in a daze, barely, registering the afternoon rain that had started to fall. By the time I reached the street corner, the drizzle had become a downpour, and something inside me just collapsed. I sank down onto the wet pavement, my back against the cold concrete wall, and let the rain mix with my tears. I thought about my mother, who cleaned houses 16 hours a day so I could have a better life. I thought about my father, who still worked in the fields at 60 years old, his hands permanently stained and calloused. I thought about how I'd failed them, how I'd proven everyone right who said people like us didn't belong in places like Sterling Technologies. That's when I felt a presence beside me. I looked up through the rain and saw him, Alexander Sterling himself, the 35-year-old genius who'd built a tech empire from nothing, kneeling in a puddle in his probably $10,000 suit, completely unbothered by the rain soaking through the fabric. He had these impossibly blue eyes that seemed to look right through my defenses, and a face that belonged on movie screens but was currently creased with genuine concern. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice gentle, despite the authority it usually carried in boardrooms and investor meetings. When I didn't answer, when I just stared at him in shock because why would Alexander Sterling be talking to me, he did something I'll never forget. He reached out and took my hand, his grip warm and solid and real, and he said, "Whatever happened, whatever you're going through, you don't have to face it alone right now." I should have pulled away. He was my CEO, or rather my former CEO. This was inappropriate and weird and probably violated some kind of protocol, but his hand in mine felt like an anchor when I was drowning, and I found myself gripping back like he was the only thing keeping me from being swept away entirely. "I lost my job," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I lost everything." Something flickered across Alexander's face. Something that looked like pain, like recognition. "I know who you are, Maya Rodriguez," he said, and my heart nearly stopped. "You wrote the analysis on ethical AI implementation that I read last month. It was brilliant, insightful, exactly the kind of forward thinking we need. So if you lost your job, someone made a serious mistake, and I'm going to fix it." He stood up then, pulling me gently to my feet, but he never let go of my hand. He led me back into the building, past the shocked security guards and gaping receptionists, still holding my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. We rode the elevator to the 45th floor in silence, rain dripping from both of us onto the polished floor, his thumb moving in small, comforting circles against my palm. When the doors opened to the executive suite, his assistant took one look at us and wisely said nothing. Alexander brought me into his office, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and finally released my hand to grab his phone. Within minutes, he'd summoned Richard Chen and the head of human resources. I watched, stunned and shivering, as Alexander Sterling, the man worth billions, personally reviewed my termination and every performance evaluation Richard had filed. His jaw tightened as he read, and when he looked up at Richard, there was ice in those blue eyes. What happened next changed my life. Alexander didn't just reinstate me. He fired Richard Chen on the spot for discrimination and falsifying records, promoted me to his personal team as a senior strategist, and then did something completely unexpected. He looked at me, really looked at me, and said he wanted to take me to dinner to personally apologize for what I'd endured in his company. Not as my boss, he clarified, but as someone who understood what it felt like to be underestimated and counted out. That dinner turned into coffee the next morning, which turned into lunch the following week, which turned into late-night conversations in his office where we'd forget about work and just talk about life, dreams, fears, everything that mattered. Alexander told me about growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes, building his first computer from garbage dump parts because it was the only thing that made sense in a chaotic world. He told me about the loneliness that came with success, how the higher he climbed, the fewer people saw him as human rather than just a bank account or a business opportunity. I told him about the pressure of being the family hope, the crushing weight of representation, the imposter syndrome that whispered, I didn't deserve any success I achieved. I told him things I'd never told anyone, and he listened like every word mattered, like I mattered, in a way no one ever had before. And through it all, there was this pull between us, this magnetic connection that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. The company gossip was vicious. People whispered that I'd slept my way into my new position, that I was his charity case, that girls like me were always looking for rich men to save us. I heard every word, felt every judgmental stare, and tried to convince myself to walk away before I got hurt. But then Alexander would find me, would take my hand like he had that first day in the rain, and suddenly none of it mattered. 3 months after that rainy afternoon, Alexander asked me to accompany him to a tech conference in New York. We were standing in his hotel suite after a long day of presentations, looking out at the Manhattan skyline, when he turned to me and said he was falling in love with me. He said he knew it was complicated, knew people would talk, knew I might not feel the same way. But he'd learned that life was too short to not reach for the things that made you feel alive. And I made him feel more alive than anything ever had. I was terrified. Not of my feelings, because I'd already fallen hopelessly in love with him, but of everything it meant. The power imbalance, the scrutiny, the 1,000 ways this could go wrong and destroy everything I'd worked for. But then I thought about that moment in the rain, when he'd knelt beside me and held my hand like I mattered, before he knew anything about my work or my potential value to his company. He'd seen someone in pain and chosen kindness, chosen connection, chosen to hold on. If this story is touching your heart right now, if you believe in love that defies expectations and breaks down barriers, please show your support by liking this video, sharing it with others, and leaving a comment about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness. Your engagement means everything. I kissed him that night in New York, and it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been but had always been searching for. We kept our relationship private at first, not because we were ashamed, but because we wanted something that was just ours, away from the speculation and judgment. But eventually, love has a way of spilling out into the world whether you're ready or not. When we finally went public 6 months later, the response was exactly as brutal as I'd feared. The media painted me as a gold digger, a manipulator, the hired help who'd seduced the lonely billionaire. My family worried I was getting in over my head. Even some of my new colleagues looked at me differently, wondering if my ideas were taken seriously because they were good or because I was sleeping with the boss. There were days I wanted to quit, to run back to the safety of anonymity, to protect both Alexander and myself from the constant scrutiny. But Alexander never wavered, never let go. He defended me in board meetings when investors questioned my presence. He publicly credited my strategies when projects succeeded. He made it clear to everyone that I wasn't his accessory but his partner, in every sense of the word. And when I had moments of doubt, when the pressure felt like too much, he'd take my hand. Exactly like he had that first day in the rain and remind me that we were stronger together than apart. Please take a moment to comment with believe if you think real love can overcome any obstacle. 2 years after that rainy afternoon, Alexander proposed to me in the most unexpected way. We were walking through the Tenderloin past my old apartment building when the rain started to fall. Instead of seeking shelter, he pulled me to the exact corner where we'd first met, where he'd first taken my hand. He knelt down in the same spot in the pouring rain and asked me to spend the rest of my life holding his hand through every storm. I said yes through tears and laughter, and as he slipped the ring on my finger, I realized something profound. That day I'd lost my job. I thought I'd lost everything, but really, I'd been given everything. Because sometimes our lowest moments are actually doorways to our greatest blessings. Sometimes the person who reaches for your hand in the rain is the person who'll hold on through every season of life. We got married 6 months later in a ceremony that mixed his world and mine, surrounded by people who'd come to genuinely celebrate our love. My mother cried happy tears and told Alexander in broken English that he better take care of her baby. My father shook his hand and said that money didn't make a man, character did. And Alexander had shown his character that rainy day when he chose kindness over indifference. Today, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Sterling Technologies, a position I earned through work that speaks for itself. Alexander and I have built a foundation that provides mentorship and opportunities to first-generation college students trying to break into tech. We've created scholarship programs, internship pathways, and support systems because we both know what it's like to face a world that doesn't always believe you belong. And through it all, through every success and challenge, we hold hands. In meetings, at galas, walking through the city, sitting quietly at home, we hold on to each other and remember where we started. People still ask me what it's like to be married to one of the most powerful men in technology. I tell them I'm not married to a CEO or a billionaire or a public figure. I'm married to the man who saw me breaking on a rainy sidewalk and decided that my pain mattered more than his expensive suit or his busy schedule. I'm married to the person who taught me that true strength isn't about never falling down, but about reaching out when you see someone else struggling. I'm married to my best friend who held my hand in the rain and never, ever let go. And that's worth more than any amount of money or success or recognition, because at the end of the day, we all just want to be seen, to be valued, to matter to someone who chooses to hold on, even when it's difficult. Alexander gave me that gift on the worst day of my life, and I wake up every morning grateful for the storm that brought us together. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of love, hope, and unexpected connections. Remember, you never know when a simple act of kindness might change someone's entire world. Be the person who reaches out. Be the person who holds on.